I am Eva Morgan. I am 42 years old. And this is the story of how the company I gave 12 loyal years to thought they could fire me quietly, right before bonuses were paid out and walk away clean. But they forgot one small, painful detail buried in my contract. And that was the beginning of their very expensive mistake. Eva, I am sorry, but effective immediately, your position is being eliminated. That is what the human resources representative said. No eye contact. No apology in her voice. Just the cold clicking of her pen, like she was checking names off a list rather than gutting someone's career. Meanwhile, my boss, Charles Whitman, sat across the table looking pleased with himself. 6 years of working under that man, and he never once learned how to knot a tie straight. That morning, it was off-center again. A dark gray tie with thin silver stripes, as if that somehow made him look important. He glanced at me with a smirk that barely hid the satisfaction behind his eyes. He was loving this. 12 years. 12 years of staying late, answering work calls on weekends, skipping vacations, fixing mistakes others made because they were too careless or too entitled to care. I gave that company everything, and they fired me 1 week before bonuses were released. 7 days. The timing was no accident. I was supposed to get at least $50,000. Money that I had already promised to my father's medical bills and repairs to the old family house before the winter storms began. Is there a severance package? I asked. My voice was calm. Too calm. Like standing still in the middle of a busy highway, waiting for the impact. Standard package. 3 weeks' pay. A letter of recommendation if everything stays uncomplicated, the human resources woman replied, flipping the folder shut as if my career was some small, finished matter. I stared at Charles. Uncomplicated. I repeated softly. He blinked but said nothing. Of course he would not. His year-end bonus pool was safe now. That was why they did this, cutting higher salaries right before bonuses to make their numbers look better to the board. No warning. No discussion. Just a quiet execution and the assumption I would leave quietly, head down, forgotten. But here is what they did not know. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button. I did not cry in that conference room. I did not make a scene. I stood up slowly, smoothed the front of my jacket with fingers that felt stiff like glass, and I left. Past my coworkers who suddenly found their computer screens and shoelaces deeply fascinating. Past the office where my nameplate still hung by the door. I returned to my desk, my old desk, where the box was already waiting for me. Someone in human resources must have slipped it there while I was being fired. I started packing. My favorite coffee mug, the chipped one with the blue flowers. The photo of my father from the summer before his illness, smiling in the garden. A handful of pens that no one else in that office ever remembered to return. Sticky notes, files, reports I no longer cared to keep. I was moving like a machine, not thinking, just clearing the space. 12 years swept into a cardboard box. Then, just as I was reaching for the drawer that always jammed on the left side, I remembered. The bottom drawer. The one I barely opened unless the printer nearby was acting up or my best pen had gone missing. I knelt and yanked it open. Inside, under an old notebook and a dried-out highlighter, was the envelope. Thick, yellowing with age. My original employment contract. Still signed. Still official. I opened it slowly. The pages smelled like dust and forgotten paper. My fingers ran down each section, each clause, until I found it. Page 7. Section 14. Clause B. If the employee is terminated without cause, they are entitled to 10% of the company's net profit for the quarter in which termination occurs, in lieu of the standard bonus or severance. I read it twice. Then again. 10% of the company's quarterly net profit. Not my department's bonus. Not my personal performance payout. The company's entire quarterly profit. I laughed, soft at first, then harder, until tears stung my eyes. It was unbelievable. They had forgotten. Charles had forgotten. He never read the old contracts. He barely read his own emails without someone highlighting the important lines for him. But I remembered. Because I had fought to include that clause 10 years ago, back when the company was small, hungry, and still valued its senior staff. The clause was meant for protection. I never thought I would need it.
Until now.
I closed the file, slid it carefully into my bag, and smiled. They thought they were clever. They thought they had outplayed me. They had just made a $1 million mistake. The next morning, I called Victor Sterling, an old friend, a lawyer who worked downtown in a firm that specialized in contract disputes and wrongful termination cases. Victor was not glamorous. His office smelled of old paper and stronger coffee, but he was relentless.
And honest.
I emailed him the contract. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Eva," he said, his voice low and calm. "I hope you are sitting down." "I am." "This clause. 10% of net profit? That includes all quarterly revenue. You realize what that means?" I smiled. "Yes." He whistled softly.
"They owe you, Eva."
"And it is not 50,000. Not even close." "How much, Victor?" "If they file their reports right, you're looking at close to $3.2 million. Maybe more. Especially after that government contract they secured last month. And if they try to argue it, I will drag their entire board into court."
"They will not risk that."
"Not during investor season." I let that sink in. 3.2 million. Not 50,000.
Not a year's salary.
But enough to pay off my father's treatments. Enough to fix the house. Enough to walk away without looking back. "Get me everything, Victor," I said quietly. "I want them to feel this. I want Charles to sign the check himself." He laughed. "Oh, he will. And you're going to love the expression on his face when he does." The next few days were quiet. Almost too quiet. I received no phone calls from human resources. No emails from Charles. They thought I had walked away, broken and defeated. But they forgot the clause. And they were about to remember. Monday morning arrived. Victor called their corporate office. Straight to the top. He did not waste time with human resources or middle management. He spoke to their legal counsel, Mr. Aldridge, an old, tired man who probably thought this would be a routine settlement. Within 30 minutes, my phone rang. It was Charles. His voice was tight, sharp.
"Eva.
We need to discuss this contract of yours." I smiled. "Do we, Charles? I thought my position was eliminated. I thought you said restructuring left no room for discussion." Silence. "Then, perhaps we can negotiate a solution that benefits everyone. I have already spoken to Victor. Your quarterly profit reports are public. My clause is clear. 10%, Charles. $3.2 million. No less. You would not go public with this." "I do not need to. Your board will not risk the scandal, or the lawsuits, or the investors pulling out in panic."
"Pay what you owe me."
"Or I file suit tomorrow morning. Your choice." Another long silence. Then, "Come to the office tomorrow. 9 o'clock. We will settle this." I ended the call. Tomorrow, I would walk into that building one last time. Not as a dismissed employee, but as the woman they underestimated. And I would make them pay. I arrived at the office at exactly 9 a.m. Not a minute early. Not a minute late. The security guard at the reception desk, Tom, a quiet man with tired eyes, looked up as I entered. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure whether to greet me as an employee or a visitor. I gave him a polite nod, the kind you give when you are returning to finish unfinished business. "Ms. Morgan," he said quietly. "Good morning." "Good morning, Tom." I took the elevator to the top floor, executive level. The floor I rarely visited in 12 years because people like me, despite all the work we did, were never meant to stay too long in those glass-walled offices. The hallway was unusually silent. No phones ringing. No busy footsteps. It felt like the building itself was holding its breath. When I pushed open the door to the main conference room, they were already seated. Charles Whitman sat at the end of the long table. His tie was perfect this time, tight, dark, professionally knotted. But the nervous tapping of his finger on the folder in front of him betrayed his calm mask. Next to him sat Mr. Aldridge, the company's senior legal counsel. Older, lean, eyes sharp behind thin glasses. a man who had survived many corporate storms. Across from him sat Victor, my lawyer, my friend, calm as ever. His leather folder sat neatly closed before him, as if he needed nothing else. Eva, Charles said, standing. His voice strained to sound polite. Thank you for coming. I am here to collect what is mine, I said softly, pulling out the chair opposite him and sitting down. Mr. Aldridge cleared his throat. Ms. Morgan, we have reviewed your contract, Section 14, Clause B. It does indeed state that you are entitled to 10% of the net quarterly profit if terminated without cause. And, Victor asked, leaning forward just slightly, we would like to offer an amicable resolution.
Quiet. Quick.
Without damaging the company's reputation or involving further parties. Translation. Victor smiled coldly. Charles spoke next. We are prepared to offer you a settlement of $700,000. Tax-free. Today. I almost laughed. 700,000? I repeated, letting the absurd number roll off my tongue. That is not 10% of your quarterly net profit. It is a generous offer, Charles snapped, considering you no longer work here. Victor opened his folder, pulled out the company's latest public earnings report, slid it across the table toward Mr. Aldridge. Quarterly net profit, Victor said gently. $32.4 million. 10% of that is $3.2 million. Not 700,000. Not tax-free. 3.2. Before taxes. Payable to Ms. Morgan. Aldridge adjusted his glasses. His face gave nothing away, but I saw the twitch in his jaw. The smallest sign of trouble. This clause was old, Charles muttered. It predates recent policies. No one enforces these anymore. Victor smiled wider. But this clause is valid.
Signed.
Enforced by law. Your board will understand that better than anyone when they are served notice of the pending suit. I will file tomorrow. That is not a threat. That is a certainty. Silence.
Thick.
Heavy. I watched Charles's face. The smirk from last week was gone. Sweat formed at his temple. His confidence crumbled like paper in water. Mr. Aldridge leaned back. We will settle. $3.2 million. Full amount. We will draw the papers now. But Victor raised a finger. One more thing. Charles glared. What else? The clause entitles Ms. Morgan to her share of net profit. But Ms. Morgan insists this will only remain private if 2 additional conditions are met. I turned my head slowly toward Charles, speaking for the first time since the offer. First, my official record. My personnel file. It will state I resigned with honor and distinction, not terminated. And you will provide me with a glowing letter of recommendation, signed personally by you, Charles. His lips tightened. He hated that. Second, I continued, my voice steady, you will compensate 2 of your restructured employees, Linda Shaw and Kevin Brooks. You cut them days before me. They deserve severance worthy of their years here. Double the standard package. Paid this week. Aldridge scribbled something on his pad. Charles opened his mouth to protest, but stopped at Aldridge's sharp glance. Done, Aldridge said. It will be written. I stood. Victor gathered the papers slowly, giving the weight of silence time to settle. Expect the final documents by end of day, Aldridge added softly. Payment will be transferred by Friday. Charles said nothing. His face pale. His power stripped clean. I turned to leave. But just as my hand touched the door, I paused. Oh, Charles? He looked up. Next time you try to cut costs, I said calmly, read the fine print. And then I left. I stepped into the elevator. Alone.
Free.
As the floors ticked down toward the lobby, my phone buzzed. A message from Victor. Congratulations, Eva. They blinked first. 3.2 million secured. Terms agreed. By Friday you win. I smiled. Outside the building, the sky was clear.
Bright.
The air smelled different.
Clean.
Like beginnings. 12 years they had used me. And now they paid for every single day. I walked to the cafe across the street. Ordered coffee. Sat in the sun. I pulled out my phone and typed something Something small but powerful.
A review.
Anonymous. Brutally honest. Beware this company. They smile in your face and cut you without warning. Unless you read your contract better than they do and make them bleed for forgetting. I hit post. Across town, I knew their phones would start ringing. But for me, my fight was over. I took a sip of coffee. It tasted like victory. It felt strange waking up the next morning. No alarm. No rushing into traffic. No dragging myself into a gray office where I was merely tolerated. For the first time in 12 years, I was free. I made coffee slowly, standing by the window as the city stretched awake. The hum of traffic. The distant sound of delivery trucks. Life going on with or without corporate walls and conference calls. My phone buzzed. A message from Victor. Transfer confirmed. $3,241,700.46 after adjustments. It's done, Eva. Enjoy it. You earned this. I stared at the number on the screen. Over $3 million.
Real.
Untouchable.
Mine.
12 years of silent endurance. Of being overlooked, underpaid, dismissed. And now the price they paid for forgetting one clause in an old contract. It was poetic. It was perfect. But I was not finished. The first thing I did was drive out of the city to my father's house. The old 2-story home where I grew up, where he still lived alone since his illness had made him frail, tired, but still stubborn as ever. He was sitting on the porch when I arrived, wrapped in his favorite blanket, sipping weak tea. Eva, he smiled. Why are you here on a workday? Are you playing hooky? I smiled and knelt beside him. No more workdays, Dad. I'm done with them. For good. His eyes widened. You quit. Not exactly. They fired me last week. But they made a mistake. A big one. I took care of it. You do not have to worry anymore. I told him everything. Quietly. Calmly. The clause. The meeting. The settlement. The amount. His tea trembled slightly in his hand. $3 million, he whispered. Good Lord, Eva, what are you going to do? I smiled. Fix this house. Pay for your treatments. Make sure you have the best care. No more worries about winter storms or broken pipes or leaking roofs. After that, we will see. For the first time in years, I saw the tension ease from his face. The years of worry, of fear, of counting every bill and penny gone. The next stop was the hospital. Linda Shaw and Kevin Brooks were in the cafeteria when I arrived. Both looked surprised to see me. Both had been fired days before me, victims of the same cost-cutting restructure Charles had used to clean house before bonuses. I sat down, pulled out my phone, and showed them the final settlement letter. Your severance packages are being doubled, I said simply. Paid this week. It is part of my settlement. I made sure of it. Kevin blinked. You did this for us? You deserved better. All of us did. And someone had to make them pay for what they tried to steal. Linda wiped her eyes quietly. Thank you, Eva. No one ever fought for us before. Maybe they will next time, I said softly. Maybe they will think twice before discarding people like old paper. We sat there for a while. No rush. No corporate schedule ticking in the background. A few days later, I stood on the deck of the beach house I just bought. Not a mansion. Not showy. But quiet.
Solid.
A place by the sea where the air smelled clean and the world felt far away from boardrooms and betrayal. The house was for my father and me. Somewhere he could breathe. Somewhere I could write.
Rest.
Begin again. My phone buzzed again. A news alert. Midland Corporation shares dip 7% after viral employee review highlights toxic termination practices. Investors express concern over leadership. I smiled. It was not about revenge anymore. Not entirely. It was about setting something right. Leaving a mark. The call came minutes later.
Eva?
It's Charles. I stepped inside the house, closing the door behind me. What do you want, Charles? His voice was tight.
Strained.
That review you posted. Investors are upset. We are asking politely. Remove it. Please. We honored the agreement. You got your money. The company's reputation is not my problem anymore, Charles, I interrupted, voice calm. Cold. You fired me. You forgot the contract. You paid the price. If you are losing now, that is on you. You built that culture. You fed that machine. Silence. Eva, please. I hung up.
For the first time in 12 years, no one owned my time.
No boss. No corporation. No deadlines or silent expectations. I stepped back outside. The sea wind was strong.
Alive.
I closed my eyes, breathed deep. My story was not one of anger. It was not rage. It was quiet, patient, calculated. The kind of victory no one could ever take away. I pulled out my notebook, the one I had kept tucked away for years, always dreaming of writing when life finally gave me room. I opened it to the first page, and I began to write. 2 weeks after the settlement, my world became strangely quiet. No more meetings. No more endless email chains about projects I no longer cared for. No last-minute deadlines dumped on my desk Friday evening to be urgently handled by Monday morning. I thought I would enjoy the silence. And I did. For a while. But after years of running at full speed, the quiet began to feel like an empty hallway.
Long. Still.
Waiting. Until the calls began. The first came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was sitting on the porch of the beach house, listening to the sound of the ocean, notebook open but blank, when my phone rang. A number I did not recognize. Eva Morgan? Yes. This is Daniel Reed. From Lockhart Industries. I hope you have a moment. I remembered Lockhart Industries. A competitor of Midland Corporation. Smaller, leaner, but known for treating its senior staff with respect. I had almost joined them years ago, but Charles had lured me back with promises of promotion that never came. I heard about your recent settlement. Daniel continued carefully. Word travels fast in this business, especially when someone takes down a giant and walks away with their dignity and $3 million. I said nothing. Let him speak. We are expanding our leadership team, and your name came up more than once. Would you consider coming in?
Consulting.
Strategic operations. 6-month contract. Set your own terms. I paused. I am not looking for a new position. This is not a position. It is freedom. Control. No politics. Just your skill. Your call. Send me the details.
He did.
By nightfall, 2 other companies had called. All rivals of Midland. All curious about the woman who beat Charles Whitman's corporate machine at its own game. It was flattering. Tempting. But I did not say yes. Not yet. The next day, I met with Victor in the city. He smiled when he saw me. I heard you are suddenly the most wanted consultant on the East Coast. Apparently. You expected this, right? I expected peace. Not more meetings.
Victor leaned back.
Eva, you do not have to work again. You have enough. But you also have power now. Influence. People listen when you speak. When you walk into a boardroom, they know who you are. And they will not forget. I sipped my coffee. Why not build something for yourself? He asked softly. No bosses. No Charles. No suits above you whispering orders. Your own firm. Your own rules. Hire the Lindis and Kevins of the world. The ones who got thrown away. Teach companies how not to destroy their best people. Charge a fortune for the lesson. I sat still. Let the idea settle like warm weight in my mind. Maybe, I said quietly. That night back at the beach house, I made a list. What did I want? I did not want a new boss. I did not want to fight someone else's battles. But building something? On my terms? Helping the ones like me, overlooked, dismissed, thrown away, that was different. The more I thought about it, the clearer the path became. A firm. Small at first. Consulting for companies that wanted to fix what was broken before they collapsed like Midland surely would. Training leaders who understood people were not disposable. And for the ones who refused to change, I would teach them the cost. Like I taught Charles. I smiled to myself. This was no revenge. This was evolution. I picked up my phone. Called Linda. Eva, she sounded surprised. I am starting something, I said. A new firm. Consulting. Protection for employees like us. Education for companies that want to do better. I need people I can trust. People who know the game. She was quiet for a moment, then softly. When do we start? The next few weeks were busy. Joyfully busy. Meetings with lawyers. Branding experts. Setting up the framework. Choosing a name. Morgan Strategic Solutions. Simple.
Clean. Mine.
Kevin joined, too. So did two others I used to work with, ones who had survived Charles's restructuring but wanted out. Fresh faces came from recommendations. Young, sharp minds tired of being crushed by the machine. By spring, we signed our first client. A mid-sized tech company desperate to avoid the fate of Midland. They wanted training, policy audits, leadership restructuring, all of it. And they were willing to pay.
Well,
the money rolled in faster than I imagined. Not millions overnight, but steady, strong, enough to fund the growth I wanted. And then the biggest surprise arrived. An email from Midland Corporation's new CEO. Ms. Morgan, I understand you have launched your own consultancy. Our board would like to meet. Privately. We are considering an independent review of our practices and leadership policies. Would you be willing to lead that process? I laughed aloud. They wanted to hire me. The woman they fired. The woman they tried to cheat. I forwarded the email to Victor. His reply came seconds later. Oh, the irony. Take the meeting. Raise your price. Make them crawl. But I did not reply to Midland.
not yet.
Because suddenly, the future felt wide. Endless. Full of choices I controlled. No one owned my time now. No one could cut me off 7 days before bonuses. I smiled, stood from my desk, and walked onto the beach. The sand warm beneath my feet. For the first time in my life, I was the boss. The summer came quietly. By then, Morgan Strategic Solutions had turned into more than I imagined. 3 corporate clients signed on for long-term restructuring. 2 former rivals approached me privately for crisis training. Even the investors I once feared began circling with offers, soft words, gentle interest. But I was cautious. This time, everything would be mine. My rules. My timing. Then came the message that changed everything. A simple envelope delivered to my beach house door. No return address. No markings. Inside, a single typed sheet. To Eva Morgan, your story has reached more than you know. I was there, silent, watching when they fired you, watching when they erased others without care. I stayed quiet, thinking survival was the best choice. I was wrong.
What you did changed something.
For all of us, Midland is under audit. SEC investigators are circling. Whispers in the boardroom say more heads will roll. But there is one file they missed, one that proves Charles Whitman and others took kickbacks on government contracts for years. I kept copies, waiting for the right moment. If you want them, if you want the final truth, meet me. Tuesday, 9 p.m. The old parking deck on 5th and Main. Level 3. No names. No trails. For justice. I sat very still, reading the letter twice. Kickbacks. Federal contracts.
Fraud.
The reason Charles had so suddenly risen to power. The reason cost-cutting became their obsession. And now this anonymous voice wanted to finish what I started. I could ignore it. I was free. I had my victory. My money. My peace. But peace never lasts, not for people like me. Not when unfinished business knocks this hard. Tuesday night, I parked quietly at 5th and Main. Level 3 was nearly empty, lit only by yellow security lamps. The city hummed far below, unaware. I stepped out of my car, waiting. A figure emerged from the shadows.
Tall. Slim.
Nervous eyes behind glasses. It was Elena Porter, Midland's former financial controller. Fired 2 months before me. No severance. No goodbye. Elena, I said softly. It's you. She held up a flash drive. Everything's here. Emails. Wire transfers. Offshore accounts. Charles was skimming government contracts. Millions. The board covered it. until they got scared and fired him, but not fast enough. You take this to the authorities, and they all burn. Why not give it to the SEC yourself? Her eyes flickered. I have family, a child. Witness protection is dangerous.
But you, Eva?
You have power now. A voice they hear. They fear you. You can finish this. She pressed the drive into my hand and stepped back. Be careful. They watch everyone. Then she was gone, swallowed by the night. I stood there, staring at the small plastic drive. One more blow. The final nail. The next morning, I met Victor at his office. He leaned back, reading the files. God, he muttered. This is real.
Fraud.
Tax evasion. Federal theft. If the SEC gets this, Midland collapses. The board. The investors. Maybe even prison. Good, I said quietly. They deserve it. Victor studied me carefully. You sure you want to fire this shot? They will come after you with everything if you do. Smear campaigns. Lawsuits. Threats. I smiled softly. Let them try. I have nothing left they can take. And more power than they ever understood. He chuckled. You're dangerous, Eva. In the best way. We filed the report the same day. By Friday, the SEC raided Midland's headquarters. Breaking news flashed across the city. Midland Corporation under federal investigation. Allegations of government contract fraud surface. CEO, former executives under scrutiny. The market crashed. Shares tumbled. Board members resigned. Charles Whitman's name splashed across every headline. By Monday, he was arrested. The empire that tried to silence me crumbled into dust. And I stood untouched, watching. Weeks later, I received another letter. This one official. Dear Ms. Morgan, as a key whistleblower in this case, your actions have been instrumental in uncovering serious corporate fraud. Under federal law, you are entitled to a percentage of recovered funds. Estimated reward, $2.1 million. Thank you for your service to corporate justice. I smiled. Another $2 million. Not revenge. Justice.
Clean.
Final. The summer faded. The beach air cooled. Life moved on. Morgan Strategic Solutions thrived, built by survivors, for survivors. I spent quiet evenings with my father. His health better. His laughter easy. And sometimes, when the wind was right, I walked alone by the shore, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. They fired me. They forgot the contract. And in the end, they lost everything.
But I
found freedom,
victory.
and a life no one could ever take again.